Chuck Todd is the moderator of Meet the Press and NBC's political director. Chuck, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
When we were growing up, the talk about vaccines was, do they work or not? Now we have established science that shows, for example, that the measles vaccine does work, and yet it's become a political issue. Why?
Well, it's a combination of a few things that all have come together, right? Number one, you have the issue of religious freedom, and that's always been something that politicians, when they talk about things like mandating vaccines, they always take one step back and always want to make an exception for religious freedom. And we know religion in politics, very important to political figures. The second thing is the rise of social media. And you throw in the combination of the scare about 10 years ago of the connection or the thought that there might be a connection between vaccines and autism, and how that spread like wildfire in social media after, in politicians, you go back to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama when they ran in 07 and 08, they were talking about it. So I think this is sort of the perfect storm of what happens when the credibility of politicians goes badly. You have the spread of misinformation so easily on the internet. And now we get to a situation like this where politicians essentially are afraid to offend everybody, so they are afraid to say anything.
It becomes a hot potato. The New York Times, the liberal New York Times, puts it this way in an article this morning. The vaccination controversy is a twist on an old problem for the Republican Party. How to approach matters that have been largely settled among scientists but are not widely accepted by conservatives. And even as I read that, Chuck, let's make it clear, this does not break down neatly between the right and the left. There are pockets of liberal, affluent America where parents don't want their kids vaccinated.
No, that's right. And I think that the pockets in California, some of this is more, I think, of a liberal point of view. But still, I think what this goes down to is we've been politicizing science now, I feel like, for the last decade in a lot of ways. You can throw, whether it's climate change. Look at Hillary Clinton's comment. I thought that can come across a little bit condescending. And I think the part of the problem here for politicians is maybe because the trust gap is so wide for them with the public that they ought to stay out of this debate. And this really we ought to be pushing forward. If you're a political leader and you care about this issue, you ought to step back and push forward medical experts on this, because at the end of the day, I think the more politicians weigh in, the more this ends up splitting along political lines, and that's going to solve nothing.
Chuck Todd, good point. Thank you very much.